While everyone was obsessing over red candles and stablecoin drama this week, 4 of the most consequential infrastructure moves in the history of digital finance happened quietly in the background. And the mainstream crypto press completely missed what they actually mean. The OCC just gave tokenized securities the same legal standing as traditional securities. Ripple just plugged its prime brokerage directly into the DTCC backbone, the same system that processes $3 to $4 quadrillion a year. A federal court granted a crypto bank its first ever Federal Reserve Master account. And Ripple Prime clients can now access Coinbase's full CFTC-regulated derivatives suite around the clock. The number one question I get every single day is this: why isn't the price doing anything? Let me pull back the curtain, because the answer to that question reveals exactly what is happening beneath the surface, and it is far more significant than anything you've seen reported anywhere else this week. Welcome back. For those new here, this channel does not do hype. We do not do hopium. We do structured, data-driven analysis of the infrastructure being built beneath the price action. Today's briefing is going to connect 4 separate stories into a single thesis. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand something that most participants in this market genuinely do not. Let's go. Let's start with the hard truth that most retail investors are not equipped to process. The reason the price of XRP frustrates people is because they're watching the wrong layer. They're watching the speculation layer. But the structural layer, the plumbing layer, that's where the real construction is happening right now, and it has been accelerating at a pace we have not seen before. Here's what you need to understand about how institutional capital actually moves. Large financial institutions, sovereign wealth funds, global custodians, prime brokers, they do not flip a switch and start using new infrastructure overnight. They require legal certainty before a single dollar of real institutional volume flows through a system. What they need are 3 things: regulatory clarity on the asset class, technology-neutral treatment from regulators, and operational integration with existing post-trade infrastructure. This week, they quietly received all 3. The OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, along with the Fed and the FDIC, just issued guidance stating that eligible tokenized securities receive the exact same regulatory capital treatment as their traditional equivalent. Read that again. A tokenized bond is treated exactly like a regular bond. A tokenized equity, exactly like a regular equity. And critically, they explicitly stated this applies whether the underlying blockchain is permissioned or permissionless. Think about what that means. Banks have been hesitant to touch tokenized assets because they feared a capital penalty, that regulators would force them to hold more capital in reserve against blockchain-native assets. That fear is now gone, officially, permanently. And the timing is not an accident, because simultaneously, Ripple's conditionally approved National Trust Bank Charter, which was designed precisely to offer digital asset custody and tokenized asset services, just got the regulatory runway it needed to become an actual clearing and custody infrastructure for traditional institutions. You see, retail investors look at these stories as separate news items. Institutions see them as connected signals, and when you connect them, the picture becomes very clear. Now let's talk about what this actually looks like in numbers. Because I'm not interested in speculation. I am interested in math. Ripple Prime, their multi-asset global prime brokerage platform, processed over $3 trillion in volume in 2025. That is not a small number. That is not a test. That is $3 trillion of institutional clearing flowing through a platform that Ripple now owns outright after their acquisition of Hidden Road Partners. But here's where the math gets interesting. Ripple has explicitly stated that Hidden Road's post-trade activity is planned to migrate onto the XRP ledger over time. $3 trillion in annual volume, divided by 365 days. That's approximately $8.2 billion per day in potential XRP ledger settlement volume from that one platform alone. Now stack G Treasury on top of that. Ripple's acquisition of G Treasury, a global treasury management platform, pushes that number up to roughly $45 billion a day once integrated. Think about that math. Fixed supply of 100 billion XRP, circulating supply of approximately 55 to 57 billion. Exchange reserves already trending toward multi-year lows as institutional cold storage absorbs available supply. If you want to move $45 billion per day through a ledger with finite liquidity, what does that do to the price requirement of the underlying asset? Because this isn't a prediction, it's a mathematical requirement. You cannot move that volume through a low-priced asset without creating catastrophic slippage. The price must be higher for the infrastructure to function efficiently. David Schwartz has been saying this for years. The utility demands the valuation. And that's before we even factor in the $150 trillion annually in cross-border payments, or the $27 trillion currently locked in Nostro and Vostro accounts globally, dead capital sitting in correspondent banking accounts that XRP was architecturally designed to eliminate. The math doesn't lie. The system is being built around a price requirement that the market has not yet priced in. Now let's talk about what the institutions are actually doing, not what they're saying, but what they're doing. While retail investors are frustrated by sideways price action, let's look at what has happened in the last several weeks alone. Ripple Prime, now officially listed in the DTCC's NSC Market Participant Identifier Directory. For those who don't know what that means, the DTCC processes somewhere between $3 and $4 quadrillion per year. It is the central nervous system of American post-trade finance. Getting listed in that directory is not a press release. It is operational integration. It means Ripple is no longer knocking on the door of Wall Street infrastructure. They are inside it, with approved product status for OTC clearing through Pershing as the clearing broker. Ask yourself this brutal question. Does a firm that processes $3 to $4 quadrillion a year let a crypto company into their operational directory by accident? Absolutely not. That does not happen without legal vetting, compliance review, and a very specific strategic reason. Simultaneously, Ripple Prime clients, meaning institutional counterparties, now have direct access to Coinbase's full CFTC-regulated derivative suite. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and XRP futures contracts, available 24/7. This isn't retail product packaging, this is institutional hedging infrastructure. Derivatives give institutions the ability to manage exposure, which is a prerequisite for taking exposure at scale. And then there's the OKX and ICE announcement. The Intercontinental Exchange, the parent company of the New York Stock Exchange, made a direct investment in OKX and joined their board. ICE will license OKX spot crypto prices and launch U.S.-regulated futures. OKX, with 120 million users, gets access to ICE's U.S. futures and NYSE tokenized equity markets in return. The New York Stock Exchange is now directly invested in crypto infrastructure. Let that land. This is not a partnership announcement. This is the parent company of the most iconic exchange in the world putting capital on the table and joining the board of a crypto platform. That is not a test balloon. That is a conviction bet. Meanwhile, Morgan Stanley, the first major U.S. bank to file for its own spot Bitcoin ETFs, is also enabling direct crypto trading and custody through E-Trade. And XRP pulled in over 100 million in spot ETF volume in just the last 2 days. The signal is clear, but only for those who are actually looking. Now let's talk about what comes next, because catalysts are stacking. The Clarity Act is the legislation that will define the entire U.S. digital asset regulatory framework, and it is at an inflection point. The stablecoin debate has created a bottleneck, not because the bill is dead, but because the banks are fighting it. And here is what you need to understand about that fight. The bank's resistance is itself a signal of the threat this technology poses to their business model. As Anthony Scaramucci framed it, and I agree with this analysis, institutions are sitting on the fence right now because they are waiting for that final regulatory green light. The moment that green light arrives, the fence-sitters do not slowly walk through the door. They run. Wait-and-see capital becomes all-in capital almost immediately. The Clarity Act vote is expected to be forced to the floor before the midterm calendar closes that window. Leadership knows that the political blame for the stall sits with the banks, not with the crypto industry. And you now have the White House, the Trump digital asset team, Republicans, and many Democrats aligned. When that clarity arrives, and the OCC's technology-neutral capital ruling suggests the regulatory architecture is already being built around it, the risk premium that is currently suppressing institutional participation disappears overnight. That is when the math I walked you through earlier becomes visible to everyone else. The fuse is lit. The question is not whether it burns. The question is whether you are positioned before the flash. Let me tell you something that does not get discussed enough in this space. Kraken just became the first digital asset bank to receive a Federal Reserve master account. Think about what that means. Crypto infrastructure now has direct access to the U.S. payment system, the core rails of global finance. The banks are furious. The American Bankers Association is calling it a violation of policy. The community banks are warning about systemic risk. You know why they're saying that? Because they know what direct Fed access means. It means crypto firms are no longer dependent on traditional banks as intermediaries. It means the moat that protected legacy banking from digital asset competition just got bridged. And when the moat disappears, capital flows toward efficiency. We are moving from an era where crypto firms beg traditional banks for access to an era where crypto infrastructure is the access point. That transition does not take decades. It takes the regulatory green lights that are being issued right now in real time. Exchange reserves for XRP are trending lower. Institutional cold storage absorption is ongoing. The speaker in today's reference said it plainly. We have passed a point of no return on tokenization. You do not uninvent atomic settlement. You do not choose T+2 when T+0 is available and cheaper. The network effects are building. The trust infrastructure is being established. The window to accumulate at these prices is not infinite. Once the Clarity Act passes, once the DTCC integration goes live on the XRP ledger, once G-Treasury volume flows through daily, that's not a prediction. That is the stated roadmap of the company building the infrastructure. The door is closing, not dramatically, not with a crash, but steadily, as institutional vaults absorb available supply and the liquid market shrinks. I know it's been a long road. I know the sideways price action tests your conviction. I know the Clarity Act stall feels like a setback. But here is what an analyst sees when they strip away the emotion. The stablecoin fight is slowing legislation, but it is also proof that the stakes are real enough for the entire banking industry to mobilize against it. You don't fight hard against something that doesn't threaten you. The banks are fighting because they understand what regulatory clarity for crypto means for deposit flight, for payment rails, for their entire fee structure. Their resistance is validation. Being early feels exactly like being wrong, right up until the moment that reality catches up with the infrastructure. And the infrastructure being built right now, DTCC integration, Fed master accounts, tech-neutral capital rules, CFTC-regulated derivatives, NYSE parent company investments. This is not the infrastructure of a speculative bubble. This is the infrastructure of a parallel financial system being constructed alongside the legacy one. The question isn't whether the system gets built. It's already being built. The question is who will still be holding when the daily settlement volume on the XRP ledger becomes visible to every market participant on Earth. While the masses are focused on the noise, the smart money is laying pipe. Here is the thesis in one sentence. The XRP ledger is being integrated into the operational backbone of global finance, piece by piece, institution by institution, and the market has not yet priced in what that means at scale. The OCC ruling, the DTCC directory listing, the Fed master account, the derivative suite, the NYSE investment in crypto infrastructure. These are not isolated news items. They are a pattern, and patterns for those trained to read them are never accidents. If you are watching this and you are still holding your position, understand this. You are not losing. You are early. And in markets, early and patient is the most powerful combination that exists. Comment infrastructure below if you made it to the end of this video. I want to know who is actually paying attention. If this analysis gave you a framework that you can't find anywhere else, hit subscribe. We do not do hype here. We do the work. Stay patient. Stay rational. The math does not lie, and the system is almost complete.